Now, we all know how international players, if they have to sustain a long career and have a long career, they need to reinvent themselves. A lot of players have done that. Sachin Tendulkar, Steve Smith, Virat Kohli. But even for someone like MS Dhoni, in his last 5 years, it almost felt like he had an existential crisis and he didn't know what to stick with. Because some changes that he did work for a while until he made another change, until he made another change. For a batter that's known to have one of the most unorthodox techniques, he doesn't have a textbook technique. And for someone like MS Dhoni, he's always relied on his technique, relied on hand-eye coordination. He made a lot of changes in the last few years that I think went unnoticed. So I thought, let's look him up, let's have a case study about him, and let's have a close look on the kind of changes he made, which almost tells us that every player in the international circuit, regardless of how successful you are, regardless of how your technique is, and regardless of if you're a batter or a bowler, you will need to adapt to change. And if you want more videos like this, like, share, and subscribe, and let us know in the comments below. Now, if you don't know who MS Dhoni is, or if you've forgotten how he bats, IPL just got over, you can go look at his highlights. So let's go back a few years. 11 years ago, when he scored 62 of 38, was Australia in 2013. When I say relies heavily on hand-eye coordination, I mean he hardly has any feet movement. Well, there he did have feet movement, but a lot of the balls that are outside off, he doesn't necessarily need to reach the pitch of the ball. He doesn't move his feet a lot. It's a lot of his hand, which deteriorates as you get older. We saw that with Virendra Sehwag. We also saw that with Sachin Tendulkar, to be honest. And so a lot of these batters need to adapt to the fast bowlers because the bowlers aren't getting any slower. But as a batter, you are getting older and slower. Let's move on to 2017. A lot of these years, his technique was predominantly the same. He didn't make a lot of changes, including in 2017, the starting of the season, when he scored those 134 runs, a century after so many years with Yuvraj Singh. What a partnership it was. He walked into bat at 25 for 3 and scored 134 runs again. Even in this, his technique is not all that changed, except if you look very closely, he has an initial movement of having a front foot press. If you look at Sachin Tendulkar over the years, he didn't really have any initial, he didn't have a trigger. Now, for those of you who don't know what a trigger movement is or an initial movement is, it's a movement the batter makes just before the bowler has delivered the ball. You've seen Virat Kohli go back in a cross. It's any movement a batter makes before the bowler delivers the ball. Now, this is to get the batter ready. It could be anything. Batter could go back, batter could go forward. He could have a front foot press, like you can see. If you look very closely, Dhoni, he has one step moving forward before the ball has pitched the ball. According to me, he does it very late, at least according to this innings in this video. But yeah, he has a front foot press. He gets ready for the ball. And that's an initial movement. It helps you react to the ball much faster, is what a lot of people say. But this is not the most interesting bit, right? Again, 2017 is the Dhoni we know. Not much has changed. And now there was the Sri Lankan series against India that even back then in 2017, which took me by surprise, because we know Dhoni for a lot of different things. And one thing we know is the kind of pads he uses. Now, even Sachin Tendulkar, for example, used the same kind of pads. Now, they're called Morant pads. Now, these are pads that look like these 2-strap pads. They're very big, but they're much lighter than the 3-strap pads that we know, that we see every international batter use almost all the time. Hashim Amla is one of them. He had a different kind of 2-strap pads, but it's essentially the same. They're very light, and not a lot of batters use it because it's very thick. So it's difficult to get used to it. We know R. Aswin uses it. Sehwag used to use it. MS Dhoni uses it. But Dhoni did use the normal kind of pads in test matches, and that is also for a reason, which I'll come to after this clip. Alright, so this is the Sri Lankan series where Dhoni started using the 3-strap pads in white ball. We have seen him use this in red ball, but he retired in 2014, so not a lot of people remember that. But against Sri Lanka, interestingly, he started using the 3-strap pad, which got me by surprise. Not only that, but he had a whole back and a cross movement. And Dhoni was known for that. Dhoni didn't do anything. He would stand still. He had an unorthodox technique and he was known for that. He wouldn't do anything traditionally. But here, it was a surprise. Now, for Adam Zampa, we saw against England where he had a small front foot press. And now, against Zampa, for example, he has a big front foot press. And he does this way before the bowler delivers the ball. Now, you might say this is against a spinner, so he's doing it. So let's move to a fast bowler, shall we? He has a back and across movement. He has a whole back and across movement even before the bowler has released the ball, which is how it should be. The clip that we saw against England, he was doing his front foot press right before the ball was pitched, which is way too late if the ball is very, very quick, because then you're stuck doing a front foot press but trying to play a cut shot or a pull shot. Here, for example, he goes back and across way before the bowler has even released the ball, which is how it should be. It is surprising because for a batter like MS Dhoni, who doesn't have the most traditional technique, for doing something like this was unorthodox in its own way. And for him to do that, there was a variety of different reasons. He was coming under a lot of criticism because, one, he was struggling to rotate strike in the middle overs. He was under a lot of criticism for consuming a lot of dot balls. That can also be seen in the stats because in 2016, he consumed 53% of dot balls in ODIs. 53%, which is way more than his career dot ball percentage, which is 48.8. And in 2017, that came down, not drastically, but by 3%, 50%, which is good enough. And he made this changes because of this. He was struggling against spinners. We all know the struggle he has against leg spinners especially. And he was struggling to rotate strike. For whatever reason, every time he touched the ball, it would go straight to the fielder. Hence, he made this change, which is good on him. For someone like him, for someone who's had the same technique for a lot of years, to make changes, to adapt to change, it was very, very impressive, because even as someone who's not made it into the international circuit and just plays corporate cricket, for example, over the weekends, to make the smallest of changes so uncomfortable, but to do this in the international arena where everyone's looking at you and criticizing you anyway, impressive. Right. Now, things don't end there. Now, there are a lot of other reasons too why he might have done this. According to Akash Chopra and according to this article written by Siddharth Monga, Akash Chopra says the thicker pads don't allow for knee flexion, don't allow your knees to bend quite easily, which is why I went to those older pads. But I don't know if I agree with completely, because yes, those are thicker pads, and because of the way the straps are, which are, the top strap is almost behind your knee, which according to Akash Chopra doesn't allow you to flex your knee as compared to the normal pads, which have a thinner strap behind your knee. But if you look at someone like Sachin Tendulkar, yes, he didn't have the biggest feet movement. He would almost always reach the pitch of the ball, and he was known to be someone who would move his feet a lot and be comfortable playing the spinners and fast bowlers, and you would see him stay low so much. So I don't know how much I completely agree with it, but that's another reason for why he may have switched pads, and the same reason why I did this in the test matches too. Test matches, they have long innings. You're known to just stay in the crease for a very long time, and maybe that's why Dhoni did that. It's the 3-strap pads wasn't new to MS Dhoni because he did this in test matches. What was new is that he brought it on to the white ball game and had a whole initial movement to go on with. But again, what is interesting is in 2017, after he made these changes, he didn't really get a big score. He wasn't able to get a big score at a big strike rate. So I don't think he was confident with the way he was batting, especially with the trigger movement. When we go ahead to 2018, he's forgotten about the back and across. He's forgotten about all that. He has a small front foot press. Even that is the minute of the front foot presses he might have. He's standing still. He's gone back to his old ways. He's made an adjustment with his back lift, the way he's holding his bat. But again, these are small nitpicking things that I'm looking at. But he's gone back to his old ways. It's worked for him, sort of, because in 2018, he averaged 41 at a strike rate of 155 in T20s. And in ODIs in 2018, he only averaged 25 with a strike rate of 71. He had a horrible run in 2018. He came under so much criticism, hardly had any scores. His dot ball percentage was not the highest, but again, 52%. It's way higher than his career dot ball percentage, which is 48, like I said before. So still, we still have the criticism going on about how he's batting slow. He's not scoring a lot of runs. And then we come to 2019. We saw 2018, why he almost had no initial during the IPL, no trigger movement, that is. And in 2019, the World Cup year, he brings it back. He brings back the trigger movement. It's not as much at the start of the season. This is the 2019 versus Australia, the second T20, somewhere in the beginning of the year. It's not the biggest. But then we go to 2019, where we see Dhoni practicing before the 2019 World Cup. And we clearly see that he's brought back the trigger movement. The pads have gone back. 2-strap pads, I think that's what he was comfortable with, running between wickets. I feel like that's why he went back to it. He's more comfortable with that, but we need to ask him. Again, so to a spinner, he has that big front foot press. He doesn't go back because you don't need to go back to a spinner. But to a fast bowler, Bumrah, for example, Kuldeep Yadav keeps coming in the way, doesn't he? Haha. Now for a fast bowler, he goes back and across. See, back and across. And he's brought it back in 2019. And then I thought, even for someone like him, for someone who's known to be so smart about the game, even he struggled to understand what works for him and what doesn't work for him. And I think for now, just because he's only playing the IPL, for someone like him with an unorthodox technique to make so many changes, of course, he has an unorthodox technique, so he will have to make changes and adapt. But if he has to, imagine the number of batters and bowlers out there who have to. If you like this video and if you thought this was interesting and you learned something new, like, share, and subscribe below, and comment down if you want to watch something like this. We enjoy making things like this, nitpicking technique and talking about technique and talking about why something works and something doesn't. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. Peace.